At the family reunion I paid for, they gave everyone a custom t-shirt. Mine said, "Biggest disappointment." I didn't argue. I just smiled, took out a stack of papers, tore them in half, and left. An hour later, they finally read what I destroyed and started calling nonstop. I wish I could say I didn't see it coming, that it hit me like a slap in the face, but honestly, it felt more like the final piece of a puzzle I'd been trying to convince myself didn't exist. I stood there holding the t-shirt, staring at the bold black letters like they were written in permanent marker on my chest. Biggest disappointment.
Nice.
My sister Laura was already giggling. It's just a joke, Frankie. Ben gave me a lazy shrug from across the table, beer in one hand. Come on, sis, you've got to admit it's kind of funny. My parents were silent at first. Then my mom let out this light chuckle like someone had told a slightly inappropriate joke at a PTA meeting. My dad shook his head, smiling like I'd just tripped on a sidewalk. I nodded once, then again, slower.
Right.
Funny. I folded the shirt neatly and set it on the edge of my plate. No one noticed that my hands were shaking just slightly, or if they did, they didn't care. I don't know what I expected. I paid for this entire reunion, venue, food, travel. I even paid for the matching shirts. That's the punchline, isn't it? They used my card to print that label, the joke. Hilarious. I'd spent months organizing this weekend, reserved the old lakeside house they used to rave about, hoping foolishly that maybe nostalgia would soften things. Maybe I'd finally feel like part of something again. Instead, I got a printed confirmation of my place in the family. And the worst part? I didn't even feel angry, just tired in the kind of way that sinks into your bones and settles there like cement. I pushed back my chair and smiled. Be right back. I walked upstairs to the guest room, my room, technically since I rented the entire property, and opened my bag. The folder was exactly where I left it. Thick, crisp, weighted. I'd had the papers printed on special parchment, something that felt significant to hold, something they could keep. I'd even considered bringing champagne to go with the announcement. Instead, I walked back into the dining room and stopped just behind my empty chair. No one looked up. They were too busy posing for a group selfie in their new shirts. Perfect timing. I took out the folder, slid the papers from inside, and, without saying a single word, I began tearing them in half, slowly, deliberately, page by page. Laura turned first. Wait, what is that? Ben furrowed his brow. Is that a contract? I didn't answer. My dad stood halfway. Frankie. I set the torn papers down in front of my empty plate and smiled again, tighter this time. Enjoy the shirts. Then I walked out. No yelling, no slamming doors, just footsteps against the old wood floor, the creak of the screen door behind me, and the cool night air pressing against my skin like relief. I didn't even take my jacket. I didn't need it. I was halfway to the car when the first call came in, then the second, then 3 more, like a dam cracking open. I didn't answer, not yet. Let them read what I destroyed first. Let them feel it. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before even turning the key, just staring at my hands on the wheel. Still calm. Still too calm, like my body hadn't caught up with what had just happened. They laughed. That part kept looping in my head. My mom, my siblings, even my dad, like it was all so harmless, like calling me their biggest disappointment was just another cute little family quirk, right up there with Laura's passive-aggressive holiday cards and Ben's jokes about me being single. But it wasn't harmless, and it wasn't new. I could trace it back to age 9. That was the year Ben broke the neighbor's window with a baseball, and I got grounded for not stopping him. Laura lied about failing a test, and I got a lecture about being a bad influence. Every mistake in that house somehow had my name attached to it, even if I wasn't in the room. At 12, I remember getting a C in math, my first. I cried, not because of the grade, but because I knew exactly what was coming. Dinner table sarcasm, mom's dramatic sigh, dad's quiet disappointment. Meanwhile, Ben could fail an entire semester and still get extra spending money for trying his best. At 17, I begged them to co-sign a small student loan, not even money, just a signature. They said no, said I needed to learn responsibility. Ben had wrecked 2 cars by then. Laura had already moved to Europe for a photography course they helped fund. but I needed to learn responsibility. So I worked nights, slept 4 hours a day, built something from nothing, a tech service at first, then a subscription platform. Learned how to code, how to pitch, how to get rejected and keep going. I didn't ask for much. A little credit would have been nice. Maybe an "I'm proud of you." Instead, I became the running gag, the weird one, the one who always showed up late to Thanksgiving because she was probably coding in a basement somewhere. When I got my first six-figure investment, I told no one. When I cleared my student debt in one lump sum, I told no one. When my company went viral, still no one. It felt like if I told them, they'd just find a way to twist it, turn it into another joke, or worse, take credit for it. So I kept quiet. But I watched Laura host parties in apartments I knew she couldn't afford on her salary, watched Ben post cryptic Instagram captions about mental health, only to DM me for money 2 days later. I grew up watching my parents wrestle with their mortgage payments, yet somehow still managed to book expensive anniversary cruises. Quietly, without drawing attention, I stepped in to help. An anonymous donation here, an untraceable transfer there. Despite everything, I held on to the belief in family. I thought that maybe if I gave enough, they would finally recognize me. That illusion shattered last Christmas. I offered to fly everyone out to a ski lodge I had rented, but my mom told me to save my money. Not long after, she posted about how Laura had surprised them with a family-funded holiday. That was the moment I decided I was done working behind the scenes. The reunion I just walked away from was supposed to be my real reveal. I had planned everything carefully, a notarized letter granting my parents early retirement, their mortgage completely paid off, a down payment agreement for Laura and her children so they could move into a better school district, and a debt relief fund for Ben, along with an optional job referral if he ever wanted a fresh start. Every document was signed, sealed, and printed on heavy linen paper. I even chose navy blue folders to match the table decor. That's how far I went. I wanted it to be meaningful, unforgettable. In my mind, I had already seen their reactions. My mother, reading the letter, tearing up with pride as she realized that the daughter she once called directionless had built something powerful enough to give them all a second chance. My father standing speechless, shaking my hand. Laura admitting, "I was wrong about you." Ben saying, "Damn, sis, I had no idea. I had imagined so many things." What I actually got was a joke printed on a t-shirt. And I know what you might think. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe it was just poor humor. Maybe things would have been different if I had told them beforehand. But here's the truth. On some level, they already knew. They saw the car I drove, the clothes I wore, the way people reacted when I mentioned my company. My mom once asked if I was doing okay financially, but in that careful, rehearsed way people use when they want confirmation without sounding impressed. They just didn't care. Or worse, they did care, and they didn't like what it said about them. So they laughed. Because it was easier to keep me boxed in as the disappointment than to admit they might have been wrong about me. Now they were about to find out what was in those documents. And not just them. Everyone who had ever heard them talk about poor Frankie, everyone who believed I was a failure drifting from one sad project to another, was about to see the truth. But things got worse before that happened, because I hadn't yet seen the messages. The ones already being sent, the lies already taking shape, the version of the story they were crafting before I even had the chance to speak. It started before I even made it back to the city. The first call came from a friend I hadn't spoken to in months. "Hey, your sister just posted something weird. She said you had a breakdown at the family reunion. Everything okay?" A breakdown. That's the word she used. I opened Facebook, and there it was, a photo of the dinner table from earlier that night. T-shirts laid out, wine glasses filled, a cake in the center. The caption read, "Some people just can't handle being part of a family. We still love you, even when you self-sabotage." No names. No details. But it was obvious who she meant. The comments were filled with vague sympathy and cryptic remarks. "So sorry, girl. You deserve peace. You did your best. Some people are just toxic. Family is complicated. Sending hugs." That alone would have been bad enough. Then came the group chat notifications, screenshots, forwarded messages, cousins chiming in. My aunt asked if I was okay. She said my mother had called her crying, claiming I had thrown a tantrum and destroyed legal documents during some kind of manic episode. Ben texted me directly, "You seriously need help, sis. You embarrassed everyone. We tried to include you, and you made it weird. Real classy." Include me?
Right.
I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the original documents to my attorney, asking him to timestamp the email and CC my assistant. 5 minutes later, she replied, "Would you like me to move up the Forbes feature to this weekend? I can add the scanned pages back in." Yes, because here's the thing, I had options. I had evidence. I had receipts. They had a story. A weak one. But the louder they told it, the more dangerous it became. If there's one thing my family excels at, it's rewriting history quickly. This time, I wasn't going to let that happen. I had allowed them to shape my narrative for far too long. Now it was my turn. I began quietly by sharing the Forbes article, no tags, no commentary, just the link. It was titled, "The Underdog Founder Who Secretly Funded Her Family's Life for a Decade and Then Walked Away." Inside were photos of the documents, scanned, signed, dated, the same ones I had torn apart at the reunion. The article detailed my company's valuation, which exceeded $30 million, and traced the anonymous donations back to me. It outlined the mortgage payments, the college funds I had created through shell accounts, and the tech mentorship grant I launched 6 months earlier for people written off by their own families. It also explained, clearly and without bitterness, why I walked away. Within hours, my inbox exploded. First came congratulations, then apologies, then panic. Laura left a voicemail. "Why would you make that public? You're humiliating us." Ben texted, "Wow. Real mature. Hope you feel good about ruining the family name." Then my mom, "We need to talk. You misunderstood the joke. We were just having fun." Misunderstood a joke. It was almost funny how hard they were doubling down. But it still wasn't over. The story gained traction. The spotlight I never wanted grew brighter. A YouTube channel picked it up, then a podcast, then even a short documentary. Comments flooded in. People chose sides, but most chose mine because people recognize humiliation when they see it, especially when it hides behind a smile and calls itself family. Ben tried to push back online, posting a rant about me being unstable and accusing me of twisting facts. Someone replied with a screenshot of the contract I had written for him, complete with dates. Another person dug up an old tweet where Laura joked about being the golden child. Not so funny now. A tech influencer I had never even heard of shared the Forbes article with the caption, "Let this be a reminder, not every black sheep is lost. Some are just done with wolves in sweaters." They thought they could smear me, discredit me, and make me look like the problem. Instead, they exposed themselves. Even so, I never spoke out publicly, not even once, because I didn't need to. I had something far stronger than a response. I had proof. And now I had everyone watching. You'd assume that after the article, after the leaked messages, after their carefully crafted narrative fell apart in public, they would step back. But they didn't. If anything, they pushed harder. Ben shared a long thread claiming I was overstating everything just to gain sympathy. He said I'd always been overly dramatic, the one who felt excluded even when, according to him, they had done their best. Laura began working behind the scenes with extended family, telling them I wasn't mentally okay, that money had changed me, that I hadn't cut ties over something as small as a t-shirt, but because I'd always been searching for an excuse to leave. My parents stayed silent publicly, but I knew they were making calls, framing everything as a misunderstanding. A tragic situation. She just took things the wrong way, they told people. I watched them attempt to rebuild their version of events, but this time it wasn't holding together. The difference now was that many of the people they spoke to had already contacted me quietly. A cousin admitted she had always noticed how differently I was treated. A former neighbor recalled hearing my mother call me a late bloomer while proudly talking about Ben's internship at a company I now had equity in. What struck me the most wasn't their attempt to twist the story. It was the realization that I had spent so much time hoping they would change that I hadn't noticed how much I had changed myself. I wasn't that child anymore, trying to earn a place at their table. I had built my own table. And the silence that followed that realization brought something unfamiliar: peace. Real peace, the kind I hadn't felt in years. They sent me a letter. It wasn't truly an apology. It was carefully phrased, saying, "We're still your family, we love you, and we hope you can move past this." As if it were just a phase, as if I had overreacted and walked away in anger, expected to return once I calmed down. I didn't respond. A week later, another letter arrived, longer, more emotional. It listed everything they had done for me growing up: meals, rides, a roof over my head, as though that erased everything else. They never mentioned the money, the years of ridicule, or how quickly they tried to ruin my name when I finally said no. Then, out of nowhere, Ben posted an old childhood photo of us. The caption read, "Miss my sister. Still love her. Always will." I was tagged repeatedly. People expected me to reply. But the only people I owed anything to were those who stood by me when I had nothing, and none of them were wearing matching t-shirts. So I stayed silent. And in that silence, things began to change. Laura's husband left her. She had leaned heavily into the "we're victims of cancel culture" narrative, and he refused to go along with it. He took the kids and moved in with his sister. I didn't hear it from Laura. I found out through someone else. Ben lost a speaking opportunity at a small event he had arranged himself. Apparently, someone sent the organizers the full article, along with an old podcast clip where he said his sister could never finish anything she started. My parents attempted to refinance their home, but it didn't go through. A friend of mine in finance mentioned that the bank saw instability. I didn't cause that directly, but I had stopped the monthly transfers. That part was entirely my decision. And for the first time, I began living my life, not out of revenge, but simply because I was finally free. I traveled without constantly checking my phone. I made choices without wondering if they would finally be proud of me. I built things because I wanted to, not because I had something to prove. Then one night, I received a message from someone I didn't know. It was just a single sentence: "Thank you for showing people like me that it's okay to walk away." That message stayed with me, not because I needed validation, but because it reminded me that leaving wasn't selfish. It was necessary. It was survival, not spite. I was never angry that they couldn't love me the way I wanted. I was angry because they pretended they did while tearing me down every time I tried to stand taller. That same night, I opened a box I had forgotten about. Inside were copies of the original documents, the ones I had torn apart. I ran my fingers across the thick, cream-colored paper, still rough at the edges where I had ripped the first set. It no longer felt like loss. It felt like closure. I don't know where they are now, and I don't look. Sometimes people send me updates, but I delete them before finishing. I don't need to know. Not because I don't care, but because the version of me who needed their approval doesn't exist anymore. She's gone, and she's not coming back. Update, 2 years later. It had been quite some time when I received an invitation to a wedding recently. It wasn't a family event, but rather a friend's celebration. One of the rare people who had witnessed my lowest moments and still chose to stay. During the reception, someone introduced me to their cousin. She smiled warmly, reached out to shake my hand, and said, "Wait, are you the t-shirt girl?" I found myself laughing, genuinely laughing. "Yeah," I replied. "Yes, that's me." She went on to tell me that she had cut ties with her own parents the previous year and said that my story had given her the courage she needed to do it. I didn't really know how to respond. Truthfully, I still don't. But her words stayed with me because for the longest time, I believed that walking away meant losing, that it meant giving up or surrendering. As it turns out, it was actually the first moment in my life when I truly stood up for myself. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if they still talk about me, if they've changed the story, if they miss me, or if what they really miss is the version of me they could control. I don't reach out to them, and they haven't reached out to me either, not for a long time now. Maybe that alone says everything. Do you think I went too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe.